Hello everyone! In today's video I'm going to talk about Wuthering Heights and revenge. Wuthering Heights is a novel written by Emily Bronte in 1847, which at first glance may seem like a typical romance novel with touches of revenge and a bit of a moral about not being a bad person, in the general sense, and how it's good to treat others with respect. The fact that it tells a romantic story can be explained by some factors. In the 19th century, the movement of Romanticism gained great strength in Europe, which does not necessarily refer to the modern concept that we have today of a romantic story, but it does explain it. The movement consisted of focusing on people's feelings and how these influenced their lives, although some works also simply showed or represented them, as was the case with paintings or music. This movement was a response to the Enlightenment, which focused on exalting intellectualism to dispel the darkness of ignorance that occurred after the Middle Ages. And also it went against the great influence the Catholic Church had on the many different aspects of life. This explains the superficial image of the work, which is similar to other works of the same time, such as Pride and Prejudice by Jane Austen. Also, people used to believe that it was a story by her sister Charlotte Bronte, writer of Jane Eyre. Related to this, I think it is important to talk about the reception that the novel had when it was first written. H.F. Chorley, on December 25, 1897, said, and I quote, "In spite of much power and cleverness, in spite of its truth to life in the remote nooks and corners of England, Wuthering Heights is a disagreeable story. The bells seem to affect painful and exceptional subjects, the misdeeds and oppressions of tyranny, the eccentricities of woman's fantasy. They do not turn away from dwelling upon those physical acts of cruelty which we know to have their warrant in the real annals of crime and suffering, but the contemplation of which true taste rejects. The brutal master of the lonely house on Wuthering Heights, a prison which might be pictured from life, has doubtless had his prototype in those ungenial and remote districts, where human beings, like the trees, grow gnarled and dwarfed and distorted by inclement climate. But he might have been indicated with far fewer touches, in place of so entirely filling with the canvas that there is hardly a scene untainted by his presence." This is all English, so in this review, we can see all the aspects that jumped at first sight of the story, which are nothing new. So why is it a classic of English literature? The novel uses various resources and symbolisms to reveal a deeper story, like in how blonde and black hair mark the intentions and postures of the characters, in how it uses the climate to establish the mood of certain scenes, on how revenge can be taken too far, how it is important to forgive and move on. All of this appealing to Christian symbolism, as well as demonstrating how our actions, despite the fact that we escape or try to retaliate, end up chasing us even after death. In this point I want to focus today, on how the novel addresses how stubbornness sometimes frees us from being able to live full lives and does not allow us to see beautiful things, which despite past events sometimes occur. It is important to see that all this is seen from a religious point of view, with the idea that only God can judge. Mr. Lockwood functions as the ship in which the reader is introduced to the story, staying in Wuthering Heights, a cold and inhospitable place, after being attacked by Mr. Heathcliff's dogs. Mr. Lockwood is awakened by the ghost of Catherine, whom Heathcliff asked Heathcliff asks to stay. The housekeeper, Nellie Dean, explains the story of the locals, who from the beginning proved to be a bit off. Heathcliff was an orphan adopted by Mr. Earnshaw, the original owner of Wuthering Heights. Since he was a child, he was hated by the children of the owner, Hindley and Catherine, for his black hair, since he was a gypsy, and for his closeness to their father. But then Catherine became very close to Heathcliff. When Mr. Earnshaw died, Hindley took possession of the place, treating Heathcliff as a slave. In one of the explorations of the English moors, they are attacked by dogs, and Catherine is taken to Thrushcross Grange, and Heathcliff is rejected again for his appearance. At this point, I think it is necessary to stop at the dogs. I think they represent the ups and downs of life, motivating important turns in history. On this story, as they were the reason why Lockwood stayed in Wuthering Heights, and that after returning home, Catherine was changed, marrying Edgar of Thrushcross Grange, even though she loved Heathcliff. Heathcliff vows revenge no matter the consequences and leaves. He comes back rich and marries Isabella, Edgar's sister, and punishes her for all the suffering her brother put him through. However, Edgar does nothing, since his sister married the person he hates the most. Again, the characters are stubborn and prefer to suffer before giving up their ideas or feuds. Catherine dies, reiterating her love for Heathcliff, regretting not having been with him. Heathcliff's plan is to manipulate his own son Linton into marrying Cathy, Catherine and Edgar's daughter, so that Thrushcross Grange is his, but she falls in love with Hilton's son, Hareton, when she taught him to read and write. Linton and Cathy marry threatened by Heathcliff. Linton dies, leaving everything to his father, remaining the rightful owner of Thrushcross Grange. Mr. Lockwood, after hearing the story, goes back to London with no intention of leasing the property. After a while, he comes back to see a friendlier house, with Cathy and Hareton married and happy. Heathcliff's plan was in vain. It did not bring him happiness. On the contrary, he sacrificed the woman he loved, who did not want to recognize her love for him for not being worthy, generating endless suffering and abuse, for then die and reunite with Catherine as a spirit. Life might be treated Heathcliff unfairly, being discriminated and mistreated, but by committing the sin of hurting others and judging them, again from the Christian perspective, he had to pay for his actions with the torture of Catherine's ghost, having a single exit to peace: death. These are interesting points of view that deserve to be read. I fully recommend the book. That would be the video. See you next time.